Hello and welcome. My name is Catherine Brewster. I'm president of the Barnard Class of 1971. I am honored and humbled to receive the award for service to Barnard. In the fall of 1967, fresh from a year living and studying in Athens, Greece, and traveling around the Middle East and Europe, exposed to the interconnectedness of all human cultures, Barnard and New York City were the perfect place for me. They were intellectually stimulating and a hotbed of activism. People were acting on what they believed, thinking globally and acting locally. I fell in love with Modigliani while taking Barbara Novak's art history class, and Dostoevsky and Tolstoy in Russian literature. I understood physics in the lab and got totally lost reading the textbook. I got an education in capitalism, and the idea that made sense to me was anathema to capitalism. The idea that one's work, whether through one's physical labor or one's intellect, was just as valuable as the money that was invested in a business. There were rallies and teach-ins and sit-ins and protests against the US war in Vietnam, against Columbia University's involvement in the war effort, developing chemical weapons for use in Vietnam, against Columbia's racist policies, evicting tenants from its East Harlem properties and building a gym on public parkland with apartheid entrances. It all came to a head in April 1968, when in protest against Columbia's chemical weapons research and the gym being built in Morningside Park, students occupied Columbia buildings, and I made my first major adult decision. I chose to participate in the student building occupation, joining the architectural students in Avery and getting arrested along with approximately 800 other students, to my parents' consternation. Due to unfortunate circumstances, I left Barnard in the middle of my sophomore year, missing the growing women's movement on campus. However, by 1971, just 4 years after the US Supreme Court ruled in Loving v. Virginia that interracial marriages were legal, I broke traditions marrying an African-American man. Over the next 50 years, like many of my classmates, I continued breaking norms in small ways. Entering the Columbia University Graduate School of Business in 1976 without an undergraduate degree as part of their affirmative action program. Joining Citibank in the management ranks in 1978, part of the first wave of women admitted into corporate management, and raising an interracial daughter. Throughout the 1970s and 1980s, as I focused on my career at Citibank and rearing my daughter as a divorced single mom, my social activism waned. Then in the early 1990s, I embarked on a spiritual path and transitioned into a second career in the field of health and wellness. As a practitioner of yoga and the healing arts, I found a new voice, inviting people to integrate that which was fragmented, to move into a sense of wholeness within themselves. And while attending Barnard reunions, I reconnected with my former classmates in Barnard College. And in 2006, I was elected president of the Barnard Class of 1971. Over the past 15 years, I have worked with extraordinary, creative, talented women from the Barnard Class of 1971, committed as I am to raising our voices, to speaking up about the barriers we women who came of age during the 1968 era have faced and vanquished, the paths we forged for ourselves and others, and the historically unprecedented lives of freedom and independence we've created with the rights women won in the middle of the 20th century. To tell our stories in 2012, we formed a 501c3 not-for-profit corporation. Together we have raised funds and created the Barnard Class of 1971 Oral History Collection, housed in the Barnard Archives and Special Collections, a robust collection of 79 life histories of women of the Barnard Class of 1971. We've commissioned 2 short documentaries, The Way It Was and Making Choices, Forging Paths. And we are in the process of producing a 6-episode online documentary series, Stand Up, Speak Out, The Personal Politics of Women's Rights, about what women's rights mean in women's lives, our mothers' lives, our daughters' and our granddaughters' lives. Rights such as equal pay, voting rights, reproductive freedom, or lack of it, to marry whom we love or not at all, freedom from sexual assault. We speak up to inspire all of us, men and women, old and young, to be vigilant about protecting the hard-won freedoms women have today, and to stay engaged in the ongoing fight for women's full equality in American life. Over the years, I have learned it takes a village to create anything of excellence, whether it is a fundraising letter, a workshop, or a documentary series, and that the process at times will be messy. As James Gandolfini said, to create well, one has to be willing to make a mess of things and to be vulnerable. And as Margaret Mead said, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. Thanks to my service to Barnard, I found my voice as an advocate for women's equality. I thank my classmates from the Barnard class of 1971 and the Alumni Association of Barnard College for this award for service to Barnard. It has been my pleasure to be of service. Thank you.